Right at my younger brother's wedding, my parents stood in front of nearly 300 guests and held out a set of Penthouse keys, demanding that I hand it over on stage as a wedding gift. I said, no. My mother slapped me so hard my earring flew off my ear, clinking onto the marble floor. The entire hall froze. I bent down to pick up the earring, straightened it with two fingers, then looked at my mother for 1 second, long enough for her to understand I wouldn't break anymore. I turned my back, walked straight out into the lobby, pulled out my phone, and dialed one single number. I'm Harper Kincaid, 31 years old, living in Chicago, working in interior design. And that night, I decided silence was no longer an option. Have you ever been forced by your own family to sacrifice in front of outsiders? If this story resonates with you, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are right now. I sat down on the velvet bench beside the concierge desk, my cheek still burning from the slap. The music from the ballroom drifted out, warped like a lie. In my handbag, the Penthouse keys rubbed against each other like evidence. I had just called Miles Avery and said the exact code phrase Grandpa left me: the file needs to be opened. Now, all I had to do was breathe evenly and wait exactly 1 hour. I'm Harper Kincaid, 31 years old, living in Chicago, working in interior design. I wasn't born into the spotlight. I just grew up next to it in a family that treats reputation like an unwritten law. My mother, Diane, turns every room into a stage. My father, Grant, stands behind her like a shadow and calls silence, keeping the peace. And my younger brother, Logan, is the golden child they've always been certain would inherit everything. To understand why tonight they demanded my keys in front of 300 people, you have to go back 3 years, an early April night when I was still in my small studio in River North, laying out fabric swatches and hurriedly eating a boxed salad. My phone vibrated. Arthur Kincaid. My grandfather didn't call to check in. He called when there was a decision. Harper, his voice was deep, clear. Listen carefully. I'm updating the estate plan. I want the penthouse in River North to belong to you. I stood still as if nailed in place. That penthouse was a symbol, the thing my mother had always assumed would go to Logan, especially since he needed to start with the right level of class. Are you sure? I asked. Sure, he answered flatly, because you're the only one who showed up. I swallowed hard. For 10 years, almost every Sunday, I stopped by, brought medicine, brought the raisin bread he liked, sat and listened to him tell old stories. I never thought I was earning anything. I just was there. But Mom will. Diane will say I'm senile, he cut in. Calm. Don't argue. You just need to stand firm. Miles Avery is handling it. And Harper, don't hand the keys to anyone under pressure. I let out a small laugh, thinking he was speaking in metaphors. I didn't understand it was a warning. 2 weeks later, Mom called me to the house in Winnetka. The living room was cold, spotless, and arranged like a meeting. Mom sat up straight. Dad was beside her. Logan stood near the window, holding a glass of water, eyes fixed outside as if trying to escape the house itself. Harper, Mom began, her voice sweet but sharp. I heard Grandpa is leaving the penthouse to you. I looked at Logan. He avoided my eyes. I don't want to make a big deal out of it, she continued, but he's weak. He's easily influenced. You understand, right? I realized this wasn't a conversation. This was framing a charge. He's very lucid, I said. Lucid enough to cut family out of property? Mom arched a brow. Do you think that's reasonable? My father spoke, his tone even like reading minutes. The reasonable solution is for you to refuse it or transfer it to Logan. He's about to get married. He needs a suitable place. Logan spoke softly, almost pleading. Sis, just do the right thing. I looked at them. 3 people, 1 goal. And for the first time, I understood Grandpa's line. Don't explain. Don't ask permission. I kept my voice steady. No, that penthouse is Grandpa's. He chose it for me. I'm not handing the keys over to anyone. My mother's smile vanished like someone flipped a switch. She looked at me no longer as her daughter, but as an obstacle. Then get ready, Mom said slowly, for the consequences of being selfish. The consequences came faster than I expected. I was erased from the family group chat. I found out Logan got engaged through Instagram, not a phone call. At a fundraiser, I heard Mom tell someone else that I was only holding the property for Grandpa because he wasn't lucid anymore. I stayed silent, thinking silence would calm the waters. Then, at the end of that year, Grandpa moved into an assisted living facility in Oak Brook. Visiting hours tightened, calls were cut short. Once he looked at me and whispered, "Keep the keys. Don't let them get their hands on them." That night, I thought consequences meant cold calls and a few smears. I didn't know they would wait for the exact day, the exact stage to force me to hand over the keys in front of the whole city. I thought that after the family meeting in Winnetka, they'd stay angry for a while, get tired, and move on. But my mother doesn't move on. She remembers, she plans, and she does what she's always been best at, turning me into a convenient story in rooms where I'm not present. Within weeks, I was cut off from everything. The family group chat vanished from my phone like it had never existed. A cousin accidentally posted a photo from Logan's engagement party, then deleted it afterward. I still caught it in time, my mother standing in the middle of the room, glass raised, a smile like ice. When I texted to ask, she replied, "I thought you were busy with your curtains." My studio has real contracts, real clients, real staff, but in her mouth, it was just decoration. The worst part wasn't being forgotten. The worst part was the way my mother talked about me. At a fundraiser in Lincoln Park, I heard my name from behind the bar. "That girl is holding her grandfather's property," a woman murmured. My mother answered, her perfect, pitying voice. "He's old, easily influenced. Harper clings to him, acting like some devoted nurse. You know how it is, old people get confused. They're so easy to manipulate." I stood frozen, my hand tightening around my glass of water. I could have stepped out and said, "Grandpa is lucid." I could have listed the times I drove him to appointments, read his mail to him, fixed his medication schedule, but I stayed quiet. I told myself, if I make a scene, she'll say I'm dramatic. If I argue, she'll say I have a motive. Silence, I thought, was how I kept my humanity for both of us. Then, at the end of that year, Grandpa moved into an assisted living facility in Oak Brook. At first, he said he wanted peace and quiet, but on my second visit, I noticed something strange. The front desk checked a list and asked, "Do you have an appointment?" I had never needed an appointment to see him. They said there were new rules at the family's request. I called my mother. "Why do I have to schedule a visit to see him?" "He needs rest," she said. "Don't be selfish. Every time you come, he gets agitated." After that, my calls were often routed to voicemail. When I showed up, sometimes they said he was in therapy or sleeping. Once I saw him in the common room. He glanced around before he spoke very softly. "Keep the keys, don't give them to anyone, and don't argue with Diane. You just need to prepare." Prepare for what he didn't say. But I started noticing small details. A staff member mistakenly handed me an opened envelope, then panicked and snatched it back. In the corner of the page were the letters POA and my mother's name. I didn't have time to read the rest. I only caught Grandpa's signature, stiff and slanted, like it had been rushed while his hand was shaking. That night, I opened my laptop and went through Grandpa's old emails. I remembered he used to send me summaries of his investment accounts, almost like a habit of transparency. In the last 3 months, there were none. Instead, there was a bank notice about adding a new contact person. I called customer service, and they refused to share anything because I was not the account holder. I started to understand my mother didn't just want me to hand over the keys. She wanted control of everything the keys represented. In early December, while I was selecting stone slabs for a condo project, mail arrived at my studio. A thick envelope, cream paper, looping handwriting. I opened it, Logan's wedding invitation, The date was printed in bold like a summons, and in that exact moment, my phone buzzed. My mother's name filled the screen. My heart thudded. I looked at the keys in my desk drawer. I knew this call wasn't an invitation, it was a trap. My mother picked up immediately, as if she'd been standing by the phone waiting. Harper, you got the invitation, right? Her voice was warm, sweet, as if she'd never called me manipulative. I got it. Good. This wedding is big. Nearly 300 guests. Your father's partners, friends of the Sloan family. She paused for a beat. I want that night to be perfect, not a ripple. I looked at the keys in my desk drawer. What do you need? Just for you to do the right thing. She gave a very soft laugh. Logan is starting a new life. The penthouse is a symbol. You understand. A wedding gift that fits the moment. You want me to hand over the keys. Keys is just the polite way to say it. Her voice dropped lower. I want you to give it back, cleanly, civilly, in front of everyone, so they can see our family is united. I felt my stomach turn cold. The penthouse is Grandpa's to leave to me. Your grandfather is weak. Her tone shifted, colder, and you stress him out. You go there, and he gets agitated. People are saying that, or you're saying that. Don't play that game, she snapped. You want to keep your studio, right? Your clients come from circles, I know. One word from me is enough for them to believe what kind of person you are. I clenched the pen in my hand. Are you threatening me? I'm reminding you of reality. She spoke slowly. You do the right thing, everything stays smooth. You do the wrong thing, I can't control what people think. Then she softened, like she was soothing a child. Come early that day, I'll arrange it. You just need to bring what you need to bring. And then she hung up. I stood still in the middle of my studio, listening to the HVAC and my own heartbeat. If I didn't go, she'd say I was a coward. If I went, she'd turn me into a performance. I opened the drawer, touched the keyring, then pulled my hand back like I'd touched fire. 3 days later, I drove to Oak Brook without an appointment. The receptionist looked at me, then shook her head. Mr. Kincaid is resting. I only need 2 minutes. She called somewhere. A manager came out, his voice polite but firm. The family requires that you schedule. I am family. He avoided my eyes. We follow the instructions of the person with power of attorney. Power of attorney. POA. The word hit my ear like the sound of a lock turning. That night, at exactly 7, Grandpa called. The first time in weeks. Harper, he said, his voice hoarse but clear. You got the wedding invitation. Yes, Mom called. I know. He went quiet for a beat. That wedding is a trap. Diane needs witnesses. She needs a stage to force you. I swallowed my anger. What do? Don't sign anything. Don't hand over the keys. And if she pushes you past what you can take, you call Miles Avery. He read the number very slowly. I wrote it down, my hand shaking. You only need to say one sentence. The file needs to be opened. Miles will understand. What file? I asked. What are you hiding from me? He exhaled, heavy as stone. Diane has been using my name to pay for things that aren't hers. I sat up straighter. What do you mean? Paperwork has been filed. There are signatures of mine, but it isn't my hand. His voice hardened. I'm collecting enough evidence. That night, if she backs you into a corner, you let Miles open the file. I heard a light tapping somewhere, like someone was standing outside his door. He lowered his voice. Don't call this number back. If you need anything, text Miles. I'll come, even if they say I'm not there anymore. Do you understand? My throat tightened. You'll really come? I've sat on the bench, Harper. I know when I need to show up. He paused. And I love you. The call ended. I stuck Miles's number on the back of my phone case like a talisman. The night before the wedding, a strange email dropped into my inbox. Recording confirmation, transfer document recorded. I couldn't open the attachment because it required a password, but the subject line alone was enough to make my spine go cold. They were doing something in his name, and tomorrow, in front of 300 people, they would try to take my keys to make it legal. The next morning, Chicago was cold and gray, like a sheet of paper that hadn't been signed yet. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my navy dress, not too flashy, not too modest. I wanted to look like myself, not a version my mother could twist into a story. I arrived at the Drake Hotel early, trying to avoid the feeling of being pressed into a crowd. The grand lobby smelled of orchids. A gold-lettered sign, Mercer Kincaid Wedding, hung at the entrance. I saw my last name after the hyphen like a minor detail in someone else's debut. The ballroom glittered, round tables draped in white linen, crystal glasses lined up with military precision, nearly 300 chairs. Clusters of men talked about funds and real estate the way other people talk about the weather. This was my mother's arena, and I walked into it with the keys in my purse like I was carrying a mine. Logan found me while the band was still sound checking. He was in a tuxedo, his smile bright but his eyes tired. You came, he hugged me, light as if touching freshly painted walls. Congratulations, I said. Are you okay? He glanced toward the head table where Mom was signaling to staff. Yeah, it's just a lot. Logan lowered his voice. Did Mom say anything to you? She did. He swallowed, then rushed out. Don't make a big deal today, Harper. Please. I met his eyes. Who do you think is going to make the big deal? Logan didn't answer. That was how he lived, silence, so he never had to choose. A little later, Sloane approached. The bride shimmered, her smile camera perfect. She hugged me the way you hug a potential donor. Harper, you actually came. This is your day, I said. Sloane tilted her head. And it's the family's day, too. She brushed my purse lightly, as if by accident. You brought it, right? Your mom said everything will go beautifully. My heart thudded. I'm not bringing that for anyone. Sloane's smile faltered for a beat, then snapped back into place. It's just keys. Don't make everyone uncomfortable. I turned away before my words became a scene. During cocktail hour, a middle-aged woman stopped me. Pearls around her neck. A sweet voice. Diane says, You've taken such good care of Arthur. How admirable. She lowered her voice. And you'll hand the penthouse back tonight, right? Everyone is looking forward to that healing moment. I understood then. Not just Sloane, not just Logan. This entire room had been seated with an expectation. If I said no, I'd be the one ruining the wedding, and my mother would stand there with a hand to her heart, playing the victim. I slipped away from the crowd and stepped onto the balcony. The wind off Lake Michigan slapped my face. I called Grandpa. It rang, then cut off. An automated message appeared. Mr. Kincaid is resting. Please contact management. I leaned against the stone railing, staring down at the street. Cars moved like no one inside knew the trap tightening upstairs. I touched my earring Grandpa's gift, then touched Miles Avery's number taped to the back of my phone case. I didn't want to call. I wanted not to need to. My father appeared near the bar, looking at me the way he looked at a file. Harper, he nodded. You're on time. He didn't ask about my cheek, didn't ask if I was okay. Just one line, like a reminder. Tonight you should think about the family's image. I wanted to ask, which family? The one that always put me last. But I only said, I'm thinking about the truth. He curled his lip, then walked away. And when I went back into the ballroom, I saw my mother standing near the stage, holding a thin black folder. She smiled at someone, but her eyes flicked to me, like she was checking that a prop had arrived on cue. And I knew the performance was about to begin. At 7:30 p.m., a spoon tapped against a glass. My mother stepped onto the stage, her metallic dress catching the light, the microphone in her hand like a kind of power. The black folder rested neatly under her arm. My heart tightened. May I have 1 minute, she said, her voice so sweet everyone believed this was a family moment. The Kincaids have always believed in sacrificing for one another. Today, Logan and Sloane begin their new life, and there is a special gift. She paused, then looked straight at me. Harper, come up here. 300 sets of eyes turned toward me. I stood, my legs heavy as lead. Logan stared down at the table. Sloane stood beside her, bridesmaids, hands laced together like she was waiting for a verdict. I walked past the round tables and up the small steps. My mother wrapped an arm around my shoulders and squeezed lightly, a gesture of affection for the audience, but a clamp of control. Everyone knows Arthur left Harper a penthouse in River North, she said, as clearly as reading a listing price. Harper has been holding it on behalf of the family, waiting for the right moment to give it back. I heard a few approving murmurs, so the story had been planted. My mother opened the folder. Thick paperwork, signatures marked with red stickers. Then she held out her hand. In her palm was the key ring brown leather fob, the largest key shining under the lights. All you have to do is hand over the keys, she said. A wedding gift, a sign of unity. I looked at the keys, then at the microphone. No, I said, one word, loud enough. The room locked up. My mother kept smiling, but the corner of her mouth twitched. Don't make this hard for me, she said, her voice dropping, but the microphone still caught it. I'm not making it hard, I replied. I'm telling the truth. That penthouse is Grandpa's gift to me. I'm not handing it over. Sloane stepped closer to the edge of the stage, eyes shining. You're going to do this on my wedding day? I'm not doing anything to you, I said, not turning. I was dragged up here to be pressured. My mother's grip tightened on my shoulder. Harper, she hissed, her smile thinning. You're ruining your brother's day. You're embarrassing your father. I drew a breath. You don't want the keys because Logan needs a home, I said. You want control. And I'm saying no. My mother's eyes changed. No more performance. Her hand swung up so fast I didn't even blink in time. The slap cracked across my cheek, hot and sharp, snapping my head to the side. My silver earring flew off, rolled across the stone floor, and clinked like a bell. The entire room went dead silent. I bent down and picked up the earring. It was slightly bent. I straightened it slowly, then put it back on. I looked up at my mother. This is the last time you put your hands on me, I said. My voice didn't shake. I turned and walked off the stage. I crossed the ballroom like I was moving through a wall of silence. No one stopped me. No one dared. My cheek burned like a coal pressed to my skin. Behind me, I heard the whispering surge, then get forced down again by politeness. I didn't look back. In my purse, the keys brushed together, the small metallic sound reminding me not to soften. I walked through the gold-lit lobby, and only when I reached open space did I let out a long breath. In the lobby, I found the velvet bench beside the concierge's desk, pulled out my phone, and dialed Miles Avery. When he answered, I said the exact line Grandpa had given me. The file needs to be opened. I checked my watch. 1 hour, just 1 hour. I sat on the velvet bench, my hand clamped around my purse like it was evidence. My cheek still burned. I checked my watch, 7:41. If 1 hour meant 1 hour, they would arrive at 8:41. I didn't cry. I recorded every detail like minutes. The black folder, the red stickers, the sound of my earring striking stone. I thought about Logan with his head down. I thought about my calls to Grandpa getting cut off. And I thought about my mother, the kind of person who always needs an audience to win. At 8:17, a hotel staff member approached. Miss Harper, attorney Miles Avery is waiting. And Mr. Arthur, I stood and walked into the main lobby. Cold air rushed in as the doors opened. Grandpa Arthur stood under the lights, leaning on a cane, wearing a gray wool coat. Thinner than I remembered, but his eyes were still sharp. Beside him was Miles Avery with a leather briefcase. I stepped closer. Grandpa, they said you... That I'm senile? Arthur cut in. Diane needs me gone, so her story sounds reasonable. Are you okay? Miles answered, clipped. There's medical confirmation, and my paperwork guarantees his right to leave the care facility tonight. Arthur touched my cheek lightly, looking at the red mark. She hit you. In front of 300 people. He nodded. Then we go in. The ballroom doors opened. The music died. Groups turned. My mother stood near the stage, microphone in hand. Then she saw him. "No," my mother screamed. "You're at Oakbrook. You're not allowed." Arthur walked down the center aisle and raised his hand. The room went silent on instinct. "I am Arthur Kincaid," he said clearly. "Tonight my daughter tried to force Harper to hand over the penthouse as a wedding gift. I'm here to end that." My mother surged forward. "Harper is lying to you. Stop." Arthur didn't say it loudly, but it was enough to freeze her. I left the penthouse to Harper. The keys belonged to the beneficiary. Miles opened his briefcase and pulled out a document. A notarized confirmation naming Harper as the beneficiary of the property. I also issued a warning. Any attempt to coerce the keys or a signature may constitute a violation. Whispers rose. I saw a few people at the head table exchange looks, faces tightening. Arthur turned to my mother. "Diane, you've been calling me senile. To cover what?" My mother swallowed. "Nothing." Miles produced bank statements. Wedding deposits were paid from an account belonging to Mr. Kincaid's trust, without valid authorization. We have issued notice to preserve the assets. Logan shot to his feet, his chair scraping. Sloane clenched her bouquet, her lips trembling. My mother looked from Miles to Grandpa like she was realizing, for the first time, that the stage had new rules. Miles pulled out another thin stack of papers. Last week, a transfer document for another Kincaid asset was recorded. The signature does not match the original specimen. A forensic examiner has filed a sworn report. Copies have been forwarded for review through the proper process. My mother shouted, "He has no rights anymore. He's under my control." Arthur tilted his head, his eyes cold. "Family is not a stage for you to steal from your own daughter." He looked around the ballroom. "Tonight, you just heard the truth." My mother screamed again, but no one applauded. They just looked away. I don't remember how I left the ballroom. I only remember my grandfather's hand closing around my elbow, steady as a railing. Behind us, my mother was still screaming broken phrases. My name, the word ungrateful, the word property, but the sound had lost its power. When someone at the head table turned away, I knew her performance had run out of an audience. Logan chased after us into the lobby. My brother's face was white. "Grandpa, the deposits, they really came from your account?" he asked, like he'd just woken up from a trance. Grandpa looked at Logan for a long moment, then said, "The truth doesn't pick a pretty day to show up. It shows up when there's enough evidence." I looked down at the keys in my hand. The thing they wanted to steal had become the thing that exposed them, because they wanted it too badly. I touched my earring. The cold metal against my skin brought me fully back. 2 weeks later, I met Grandpa at a quiet cafe near River North. He came with Miles Avery, carrying a thin file, thin enough to fit in a bag, heavy enough to change the direction of everything. Miles said the bank had frozen the suspicious transactions, the transfer filing had been put on hold, and the power of attorney would be reviewed. Grandpa didn't say much. He only gave me one line. "From now on, you don't explain yourself to people who don't respect you." Logan texted me, "Sis, I didn't know, but I let it happen." I replied, "Whether you knew or not, you still chose silence. If you want to make it right, start with the truth." I didn't block him, but I didn't leave the door wide open either. My mother sent a long email like an indictment, half blame, half begging. I read it once, then saved it, no reply. That was the first boundary I held all the way through. That month, my father left the house, rented a hotel room to protect the image. Guests texted apologies, saying they'd believed the wrong story. Logan delayed the honeymoon because of paperwork issues, and my mother, for the first time, had to answer lawyers instead of a microphone. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt relieved. I started therapy the next month. Every week, I learned how to say no without apologizing. My studio kept running, and strangely enough, a few people who had once believed my mother reached out to propose partnerships. I chose carefully. I didn't sell my private life for contracts. One Sunday evening, Grandpa sat with me on the penthouse balcony, watching Chicago light up. He said, "You see, Love doesn't need an audience. It only needs respect. I nodded. My cheek no longer burned, but the memory stayed like ink, reminding me not to go back to the old version of myself. If you've ever been forced by your family to sacrifice just to protect their image, I understand. Tell me, what city are you listening from, and what time is it where you are right now?